In local matters, Republicans in Virginia are looking to keep the seat now left open by Congressman Tom Garrett after he announced he won't be running for re-election in 2018. The Conservative Freedom Caucus member resigned last week after announcing he is an alcoholic and wants to instead focus on his recovery.
This just days after former staffers told Politico that Garrett and his wife made inappropriate requests and treated them like servants. Garrett calls the allegations against him, quote, a series of half-truths and whole lies. With a preview of next week's primary race, we want to bring in Richmond Times-Dispatch political reporter Patrick Wilson. He joins us now from Richmond, Virginia. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Vlad and David.
So who's slated to replace Tom Garrett now that he has announced he's not going to be running for re-election? And explain what's his platform for us, the guy who's put his hat in the ring.
Sure, yeah. We do have primaries next week in Virginia, and in this particular congressional district, which is the 5th district, both candidates have already been chosen. The Democrats have picked Leslie Coburn, and on the Republican side, to replace Tom Garrett, last Saturday, the members of the Republican committee for this district met, and after rounds of voting and competition, they picked Denver Riggleman, who owns a distillery out near Charlottesville. He is a libertarian-leaning Republican who is never held office before. He briefly ran for governor last year in the Republican primary and seemed to generate a lot of attention because of his libertarian leanings, people like his personality. He's not opposed to gay marriage. He is against the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which is a controversial natural gas pipeline that's planned to run through the area. So Riggleman is the candidate that's been picked to go up against the Democrat in November in that district.
All right, Patrick, let's look at the Senate right now. Democratic incumbent and former vice presidential candidate Tim Kaine is running against 3 GOP candidates. What does that race look like?
Well, this race is looking very good for Kaine by everybody's assessment, but the Republicans are having a primary to nominate a candidate to challenge him. He obviously, has millions of dollars ready to spend on his reelection bid. He's coming off of his loss as the vice presidential nominee in 2016. And on the Republican side, there are 3 candidates that are on the ballot Tuesday. One of them is Cory Stewart, who's the chairman of the Board of Supervisors in Prince William County up in the Northern Virginia area. Very conservative and often controversial candidate who has a knack for saying controversial things, gets a lot of attention in the media. There's a candidate from Culpeper named Nick Freitas, who is a state lawmaker who is newer on the scene statewide, but is making a statewide run in the primary. And then there's a minister from Chesapeake down in the Hampton Roads area, E.W. Jackson, very conservative African-American Republican who was the Republican nominee in 2013 for lieutenant governor and lost that year. So I think what a lot of people have been looking at is Cory Stewart and Nick Freitas, and whether this younger state lawmaker Freitas can make a showing, I guess, against Stewart, who is known for his run for governor last year in Virginia, where he and Ed Gillespie were in the gubernatorial primary together on the Republican side. Gillespie, of course, being the former RNC chairman, former lobbyist, political strategist, well-known national figure. Gillespie is making a run for governor, and Stewart is making this insurgent run where he is attacking Gillespie throughout the primary, sometimes in incendiary ways. And Stewart nearly ends up beating the establishment Republican in that primary. So what Cory Stewart did is basically a month after losing the primary for governor last year, he basically announced his campaign for Senate. So he's been campaigning for quite a while, and a lot of people perceive him as the front runner. But Virginia is interesting right now. There's no polling or any credible measure to know what the Republican electorate will do on Tuesday between Stewart, Freitas, and Jackson on the Republican side.
Has President Trump weighed in on either race?
To my knowledge, I don't think he has weighed in on the Senate race. Last year in the governor's race, the president issued a tweet that was sort of an endorsement of Gillespie, that the Gillespie campaign, they were balancing, wanting Trump voters to vote for them, but not wanting to embrace Trump and turn off a lot of the electorate in Northern Virginia, which really drives a lot of the election statewide results in Virginia and is much more liberal than the rest of the state. But Trump has presence, in these elections because he's generated this energy and excitement on the Democratic side last year in the state house elections and then currently this year in the races for Congress.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question that David asked because in some states, in Arizona, for example, or in Alabama, the president's presence and his support and candidates who have tied their futures to the president's administration seem to do well. But in Virginia, you point out that it is sort of an interesting state because if you will very well know better than I that there was a blue wave for some Democrats, and that flipped 15 seats in the Virginia State House. So do you expect to see something similar in the congressional races?
Well, yeah, I think that there is an expectation that there's a likelihood or a chance at Democratic gains in the congressional races. The Republicans, however, are not giving up. They're on the defensive, but they are hoping to do as well as they can. They're fighting against this blue wave, as it's called. The interesting thing about Trump in Virginia, in a general election statewide, Trump is a drag on a Republican. Trump lost Virginia by over 5% to Hillary Clinton. It's the only southern state that Trump didn't carry. But in a Republican primary, like the one we've got going on for Senate right now, you definitely have candidates who have all embraced Donald Trump. Cory Stewart worked for the Trump campaign. The electorate in Virginia on the Republican side seems to be divided between the pro-Trump faction and then the Republicans that are appalled by Trump and want nothing to do with him. And, all of the three candidates have embraced the president, especially Stewart. And sometimes the debate will fall down to, between Stewart and Freitas, there was a point where Stewart was questioning whether Freitas had strong enough support for a border wall on the Mexican border. So in the Republican primary, Trump is a great thing. In the general election, it's going to be a drag on the president's going to be a drag on the Republicans, no matter who they nominate.
That's a good point. How he plays in the primary doesn't always match the general. Patrick, thank you.
Thank you.